Welcome. This is Worth Quoting at FCCJ. I'm your host today, Charlotte Mentor. And with me are our guests, Dr. Martha Nesbitt, Vice President of Academic Affairs at Dekalb Community College outside of Atlanta, and the President of that college, Dr. Jacquelyn Belcher. Welcome to Worth Quoting at FCCJ.
Thank you.
Today our guests have been working with our Women and Minority Leadership Program, covering two subjects of great concern to people who are looking for careers, looking for advancement, and that's mentoring and networking. I want to ask you all, mentoring and networking has been done by people for a long, long time in the business world and perhaps also in some of the community work. But recently it's become much more formalized and they're almost like buzzwords in terms of careers. Can you tell me what's happened to make that so and how you see the change that's taken place?
Well, Charlotte, in I would say the late 70s and early 80s, we began to experience these economic changes that where businesses were beginning to kind of restructure and make some changes. People started getting concerned about their jobs, the restructuring as we've come to know it now in the 90s, and the right sizing and using temps, people losing their jobs, a whole host of reasons that would affect people's livelihoods have caused people then to begin to look at mentoring and networking, in needing to look at it in a very formalized way. So it has intensified. It also, I think, has been shaped by just all the other kinds of changes, the technological changes that have caused us to move along fairly quickly in our society.
Do you have anything to add to that, Martha?
Well, I think another aspect is that some studies were done in the 60s and 70s to show that people who were moving up in the organizations were often benefited by having a mentor. And then it became sort of, well, if you want to move up, you need a mentor. And so there were a lot of articles written about it, and a lot of institutions have discovered that it actually helps the institution to establish formal mentoring systems as people come in. The new employees, the new faculty, new administrators are acclimated to the institution, and they are much more cohesive and cooperative and therefore more productive. And so I think that the research pointed out the benefits not just for the protégés, but for the institutions. And then people who've served as mentors have also pointed out that they have benefited from the relationship because it's brought them fresh new ideas.
Well, let's talk about it both from the individual and the institutional point of view. Say I'm in an institution and I would like to find a mentor, but it may not be somebody I immediately know. How do I go about that? What do I do? I'm looking for somebody to help me out. I want to advance. I have an idea of where I want to go. So what would I do?
Well, there are a couple of ways that you can go. One is to, first of all, you have to get to know people in the organization. And once you get to know someone that you trust, you might ask them, you know, I'm looking for a mentor, somebody that can help me learn the ropes, can get the information I need, that can help me with contacts. And that trusted individual then might be able to help you. Another way is to actually talk to other people in the organization to find out if there is mentoring going on, that sometimes human resources departments, if you contact them, will actually help you with a mentoring situation. But sometimes it's just an informal process, and as you get to know people, then you identify someone who you believe that believes in your abilities and a person that you would like to work with.
Charlotte, I think also an important aspect of this is that as our workforce has diversified more and is wanting to diversify more at senior levels, that it's been very helpful to become more formalized, because women and ethnic minorities have not had access to the senior level, mid-level positions. And so as Martha was talking, I realized that just how very important that is for those two groups. So it helps all people come along, but it particularly, I think, helps ethnic minorities and women to gain access and to come to understand some of the protocols that are involved, as well as some of the political issues involved.
That's right. You talk about a formal program. Do you have a formal program at Dekalb or a sample you could tell us about? We do not have a formal one here at the college at this moment, although we've discussed it. So I think it'd be interesting to hear either a model you have or somewhere else that you might could share with us.
Well, we did adopt a rather formal model at Dekalb about 7 years ago, and it had to do with the timing, really, as much as anything. We were growing very rapidly as an institution, and we began bringing in more and more new faculty, both a combination of new positions and senior faculty who were retiring. And our system is set up in such a way that each new faculty is assigned a mentor, and we work with the department chairs involved because we want that to be a really healthy relationship. And so we're looking for our best teachers. We're looking for our most enthusiastic veteran faculty. And they have an assignment for a year, and it's fairly structured. We have training sessions for the mentors to let them know what the expectation the institution has in terms of meeting with the new faculty, explaining policies to new faculty, explaining the informal ropes that Jackie talked about, and also talking about the mission of the institution and the importance of teaching in the institution. And all of these things have, at least in terms of the results of our evaluations, been very helpful to the new faculty, as well as to the mentors who've worked in the program.
Do many people who go through and are mentees, I guess is the correct word, do they then offer to be mentors eventually?
Yes, they do.
They turn around and they see the benefit of that. Do you know, did you all, I would be interested in knowing if you had mentors and how that person or persons might have influenced your careers. Because I know both of you are quite successful, obviously, from the positions that you hold. And I wonder if you would share with us something that might have happened from your own experience.
Well, I was very fortunate, I think, to find mentors early in my career, men who, and I say this, and I say it with a great deal of respect for the men who early on said to me that, yes, indeed, you do have talent, and yes, indeed, you're going to be a president, although I had no idea that I was going to be a president or that I even wanted to be a president. But for them to take the time to explain to me and to make the contacts for me and to expose me to different experiences that I would not have had access to. So I would say at the very beginning of my career, I had mentors. I have 3 mentors that I will never forget and always be very, very grateful to. They were all college presidents who took me from the time I entered a community college as a faculty, identified me as a person that they wanted to see grow and develop.
How about you, Martha?
Well, I never had a mentor. I did have, very fortunate to have at least 2 people who I would qualify as sponsors, people who supported me and who made introductions for me and made opportunities available. But my experience has been more that I have learned from a number of people. And because a mentoring relationship does, as Jackie pointed out, involve education and encouragement. They're a sounding board. They provide support and give introductions and so forth. And I never had that in one person, but I have been fortunate enough to work around a number of people where I could pick up what I thought were their best traits.
Well, we've talked a little bit about what the mentor does. What does the mentee do? I mean, is there a responsibility they have in this relationship too? I mean, these people were helping you. They were pointing out ways for you to go. How does a mentee respond to that, especially when you get in a more formal relationship?
I think you have to be willing to be engaged. Otherwise, the relationship, it needs to be a reciprocal relationship. And the reciprocity part of it in terms of the mentee has to do with the being willing to be engaged. And it also means making some sacrifices, being flexible, all the things that it takes to be a good leader, I now understand. It also takes to be a mentee, the same qualities of being flexible, high energy, being observant, being open to the possibilities, taking advantage of situations, being very people-oriented, other-oriented, just anything that you can think of in terms of leadership qualities, it requires that of you. So it's high energy. You have to be willing to invest your time in your position, as well as this is an add-on, if you will. And that's what many mentees do not understand when they first start out in a mentoring relationship.
Yeah, I wondered about that because many people may think it's all done for me rather than what am I supposed to do?
It is, there's nothing passive, I think, about being a mentee. Yeah.
Well, that's what I think there's some pitfalls in this whole thing because I've seen people start out with great intentions of establishing mentoring programs, and it starts off with a great bang and everybody's really happy, and then about 6 months later things seem to be sort of losing their steam. Can you point out some of the pitfalls and things that people might watch out for if they're interested in starting this, either an individual relationship or a formal one?
Well, I think expectations have to be clarified. And for example, if I could talk about a formal situation, we do let our faculty who are mentors know what is expected of them, and it is a volunteer situation. And then, and as I mentioned earlier, we have the training sessions. But also when we have our day of orientation for new faculty, we talk about the program with them. We bring the mentors in for the part of that program so that there is this clear expectation of what is involved. Now, sometimes, particularly in a formal program, you might mismatch somebody. I mean, this may have been a superior star teacher who's your veteran faculty member, but somehow or another it doesn't gel. And so we encourage our department heads to kind of monitor this relationship, and if, you know, sort of through the year they find out it's not working, then they try to match this person up with someone else.
Candor is really important. Trust, we're talking about trust and respect, all the interpersonal qualities that needs to be there to have a good relationship. Candor is very important. And the mentee sometimes outgrows the mentor and vice versa. The mentor sometimes needs to end that relationship for some reason, and it shouldn't just kind of fizzle out. It needs to, they need to be candid with each other, bring it to a close, and move on.
Okay, well, let's talk a little bit about networking. And that seems like they're sort of intertwined in a way, aren't they?
Yes.
But networking, a lot has been said about networking, all the way from, well, let's exchange your business cards, and, you know, you collect all the business cards you can, to really somebody setting up a successful network. So, Jackie, can you define for us a little bit about what is successful networking? How do I go about that?
Well, it's certainly not the Rolodex that we used to think that we needed to fill up with business cards. That has never, as many of the, at least many of the experts say, that's never led to a job really just going out and exchanging business cards. But it is a long-term process, which I think many times people do not think of networking in that way. It's linking with people in a relationship, and it's looked upon as partnering, you know, like a partnership. So you link with people and our groups for mutual benefit, And it's a long-term thing. It's like fundraising. You build this relationship, and the payoffs can be in many ways. It can be information about trends. It can be information about jobs, a new position if you're looking for a new position, and it needs to be reciprocal. When the people call you, you've got to be willing to respond. But it's creating those linkages that are going to be helpful to you to help you realize your goals. It requires an investment of time. The average amount of time, it is said, at least by the experts, for networking is 3 to 4 hours a week in some way that you put in networking to keep those networks alive.
How do you keep them alive?
You keep the contact. It's like a marriage, isn't it? I mean, you do want to spend time with your partner. It's a partnership. And you keep it fresh, you feed in information, you get information, but the contact is extremely important. The connection.
Yeah, because a lot of people that you know obviously are around the country.
Yes.
As opposed to, it may be local, but it seems like more and more we're working more on a national or regional or national basis just because, well, because of fax, I guess, and phones and internets and computers and electric mail and meeting at conferences. So is that you treat those the same way?
You do, and you keep the contact through those, the same kind of idea. You use the fax, you use the telephone. I know people who have conference calls, a small group of people, and that's the network that they most value. They can get the trends out of that. They can hear their college presidents actually who want to talk with each other. It's their network, and they can exchange information, help share confidences. They're not on cellular phones, so that's okay. But really and truly, it's that kind. We're taking advantage of the technology.
So it's a little deeper than just getting to know people on a professional basis. It's really support.
It is support, it's encouragement, it's sharing confidentialities. It can be in your personal life as well as your professional life, especially if the personal life is affecting the professional life. And yes, it requires all of the things that make for a good friendship, you know, a very deep friendship.
So do you have anything to add to this, Martha? We've been sort of leaving you out here.
No. I find that it's been very personally enriching to get to know these people around the country. Jackie and I fortunately met over 10 years ago, and just being able to see her at conferences, to being able to call on her. We've done presentations at national conferences together. I find that to be a very important part of my professional life. But I'd like to also piggyback on the information aspect. Just a few months ago, I got a phone call from somebody I did not even know, but my name had been given because this was a multi-campus college about to reorganize, and they wanted to know how we were organized and why we did it. And we get phone calls like that from people we don't know because of the networking. So I ultimately think that higher education benefits because we share these ideas around the country.
So it's really a sharing.
Yes.
You know, because networking sometimes seems it might just be building up for the individual. Sort of a cynical look at it of the more contacts I can make, you know, the better off I'm going to be. But you're presenting it.
Yeah, well, like FCCJ has just had the Mentoring Network workshop. Well, Martha and I sincerely mean it when we said to each one of the participants, feel free to call us. And if we can help you get your plan developed or point you in a direction, we will do that. It's a network for them, and they also have a network amongst themselves now that they would not have had. And one does not take that lightly. I would say at least 75% of that group will take it seriously and continue those relationships.
So for people who are just beginning to set up their networks in their profession, what type of groups would you suggest that they might want to contact, or what type of people would you say they might look for? Just say, you know, you were speaking to that group and giving them some clues, and I'm sure they already have some of their contacts, but it's basically, it's building. So how would you tell a person, again, like in mentoring, how do you get started on that?
Well, if you're looking at networking is a little bit different than mentoring.
Right.
But in networking, I would simply say to them, if you're interested in the community exposure and getting to know more about your community and seeing how you can bring that to bear, then I would get involved in Rotary, Kiwanis, United Way, some of those organizations. You can do it through churches too, but make a contribution and get into the volunteerism aspect of it. If you're a faculty person, you can do that, or you can get into your disciplines. You can get into all kinds of professional associations. I would go outside of the discipline and get something that might be related to it in some way, but not directly into the discipline, so it would give you a broader perspective. And that they begin to feed on each other. People begin to recognize your name and offer to present and speak. That's real important.
Offer to present and speak.
Yes, you know,
it's really getting out there, isn't it?
It is getting out there, and it's taking a few risks.
Yeah.
It's taking a few risks and doing things that you've probably never done before, exposing yourself to all kinds of possibilities in terms of meeting people.
Well, in terms of networking, we have mentoring has its informal side and its formal side. Does networking have that same side to it?
Yes, it really does. We have the National Institute for Leadership Development, and that's an organization that provides leadership skills and experiences for women. And that's very formalized, and it's created a network of how many thousands have gone through that leadership thing. And we know that all we have to do is pick up the phone. We have lists that come out all the time of the leaders as well as the presidents who were leaders. And so you just pick up the phone and say, I'm Jackie Belcher, and I'm a leader, and I know you're a leader, and you go from there.
Starts.
Yes.
Well, Jackie, you've broken the glass ceiling in education, if there is one.
If there is one.
I wondered if you think that mentoring and networking will help someone to do that, if that's two of the strategies that you might use as we talk about this glass ceiling. And apparently there must be enough of one that exists that people are concerned about it.
I do believe that it indispensable for women and ethnic minorities. I believe that it is indispensable. I can say that moving to the vice presidency, Vice President of Academic Affairs, networking was very helpful to me. I would not have understood that organization nearly as well when I went there. I would not have understood some of the issues that they were dealing with, what the questions were all about in the interview, not nearly as well as I did, because I simply had the contacts on the inside who helped me understand the organization and who had an interest in me as a woman, as an ethnic minority, and just a belief in me. So I can say honestly that I think mentoring and networking propelled me much more rapidly, anyway, than I would have become a president.
Well, I noticed that you were also chair of the board of directors of the American Association of Community Colleges.
Yes, that's true.
And I think that must have been, but that too must have been born out of some networking as well as your talent. But I think that...
And being involved, I think being involved is really key. Being willing to give of your time, of yourself, and acknowledging other people and bringing other people along. We can't ever forget that. You know, there's a time when you must respond too,
Right.
And that's a part of it.
And Martha, you're Vice President of Academic Affairs at Dekalb, and that has traditionally been a male position in most of higher education. And so tell me a little bit about how, if you used any of these strategies and how they might have impacted your getting that position, either networking or mentoring or a combination.
Well, it was really a combination for me because, as I mentioned earlier, I didn't have a single mentor, but I did network. And just simply getting involved nationally with the Leaders Program in turn helped me in my own institution, because when it came time for promotion, those people who made the decision knew I had been through the training and I had the experience at the institution, and they had seen me work. And this sort of brings up one thing I would like to point out that we pointed out today to the class, and that is that mentoring and networking should be viewed sort of as tailwinds to help one move along in one's career. They are not shortcuts.
Okay.
One has to have the competence, the credentials, the experience, and the human relations and communication skills. But you can have all of those, and then what the other does is to just help you move forward.
Sort of pushes you forward.
Right.
Now, I'd be interested when, is this your first presidency?
No, this is my second.
This is your, where were you president before?
At Minneapolis.
At Minneapolis. And so then, but this is the larger school?
This is a larger school. I was vice president at a school the same size in Eugene, Oregon. But this
In Eugene,
is
Oregon. So you've had a very solid background
I've been at
in
4
coming to this
institutions.
position.
Oh, I've been at 4 institutions.
And so you've been on the road. I guess it's sort of speaking, and I'm sure you have the same types of experiences. You have built these experiences, so you won't be shortchanged there. And so in this beginning a search for a presidency and in breaking this so-called glass ceiling, which both of you have done, how you set a goal for a presidency, you were already a president, but you wanted to go to another presidency. Can you talk a little bit about your career and how that happened in terms of your goals for yourself?
You know, Charlotte, actually what happens a lot of times, and this is a point that should be made, sometimes headhunters will call you, and even though you may not be interested in moving, you think, you should respond anyway. You should listen to what, because that tells you kind of what's going on in the world of higher education anyway, if you're in higher education. It tells you what is going on, tells you something about the trends, and then if you treat that person politely, that person's probably going to call you back again. It also means that you've been referred. Somebody has said to that headhunter, you know, go to such and such a place and talk to Jackie Belcher or talk to Martha Nesbitt, simply because this seems like either one of them would be a good fit. It would be that kind of thing. And so in my position, headhunters found me, and I responded for an interview, and it went from there. And that, I think, had to do with networking, being visible, being involved at the national level, being involved at the state level, being willing to speak, and kind of pay the price of visibility, because there is a price to pay for visibility.
Oh, yeah, I think people forget that too, don't they? Quite often.
Time.
Yeah, we have just less than a minute probably to go. I just wonder if there's any piece of wisdom that you would like to give our audience or our viewers about this whole subject, or anything you'd like to add before we have to go. I could talk to you guys all day, but we do have a time limit here. Martha, anything?
Well, the one aspect that Jackie focused on today is this reciprocity, and the fact that we do need to seek mentors when we can. We certainly need to network, but we need to turn around and serve as mentors. And in fact, the research today shows that younger women are more likely to have mentors than older women, and that's because we're seeing now that the women who have been mentored are turning around, and we do need to help each other in those situations, women, ethnic minorities.
Yeah, Jackie, anything real quick
Well, I think of a statement I saw when I was at Lane Community College, and I've never forgotten it. The quote is, to do the common thing uncommonly well. And I think that that is what mentoring is all about. The common thing is to build relationships with people. I mean, that's what the world is about, relationships. And I think to be successful in a mentoring relationship or in networking, you have to do that uncommonly well.
Thank you both so much. This has been Worth Quoting at FCCJ. Goodbye.